Okay, Antoine, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice.
It's really, really nice to see you again. Let's start off by talking about the new MikhMakh record, Flash Sale, and tell me a bit how it came to be and how it originated and everything.
I mean, the short version, and then I can maybe go on a tangent. But the short version is that it's the record that comes after Sunrise, that came after Groovy Wonderland, and for each record, there's been more of a what I feel a stronger identity. Like the first record I did, it was right after music school. So then you're full of ideas, but there's great bits and pieces, but it can be chaotic a bit. And so second record, there's more. It's more coherent and it's more refining what I feel MikhMakh should be, and for this one, I mean, it may be cliche to say, but I feel like okay, no, but this is a record that has an identity and that where I yeah that I'm proud of basically. But then, if we have to tell like the long story, um, during the after I made Sunrise, I mean, I made it in 2020, but released it in 2021. So we delayed and delayed the release of the album due to the pandemic. But then during that whole time, I had a period where I was just thinking about what MikhMakh should be next. Um, and there was a lot of trial and error and a lot of bad decisions at first, and a lot of very interesting conversations with both Lisa, my wife, and Sophie, my mom, who had understood what MikhMakh was way better than what I knew at the time. And so I just stopped overthinking and composed this third album. I should say that the main difference, and you tell me if I'm too long or whatever, but like the biggest difference for this album was that I identified as a frustration in Sunrise that I wrote as a guitar player. So I wrote the whole song instrumentally, everything, like all the arrangements, and then I wrote the lyrics and the melody to the song. But for and so it was a bit frustrating sometimes to just have composed like this instrumental song that is begging for vocals but have nothing to say. It's like, oh, did I really have no lyric idea and I composed all of this? Of course, you then find ways, but it felt good to actually do it the other way around and say, no, but I will only write music if I have something to talk about. And that way, well, I started writing lyrics. The lyrics have a mood to themselves, they have a rhythm. And that's like the biggest change from Sunrise to Flash Sale. That's the thing that, well, for me, made it a very interesting composition process, but I think in the end makes for a more song approach. Um, so yeah, that's like how Flash Sale came to be, and maybe for that also there's more engaged lyrics and this sort of stuff.
But the concept was always that MikhMakh is your solo thing for which you have other musicians joining you.
That's the thing. I'm really, and time will tell, but I'm really fighting for this to be a band. But the thing is, you always need a context. So for me, it's easier to say this is the vibe. Let's go here and have fun here, than say everything is possible, because everything is possible is like playing a game where there's no rules. Well, if there's no rules, there's no game. So that was my approach with the first record that I composed by myself, then met musicians at music school and felt like, oh, maybe we could give this a try. And then tried to get this band dynamic. But it has always been, in the end, I mean, it has always been me composing everything and giving it to musicians. But I really like I'm fighting to have this band core. Like I have my drummer right now for live. He's a Swedish guy called Olle Solberg, and he feels like this guy I can rely on, and we can rule the world together. It's an expression. It's an overstatement, but you know what I mean. Where we are, there's a strong connection, and that's what I'm looking for. Like, guys that I can have on stage as being the band. When it comes to composing, I like composing all the instruments, and I feel like the result is good. Like I don't mind having. I have to end my sentences. I'm always all over the place. Lisa tells it to me all the time. It's like you should start a sentence, stop. But so basically, I'm always the guy. I've always been the guy who composes the whole thing, and says, because a musical idea, a riff, for instance, can be interpreted in many ways. So, in order for me to show how it's supposed to be heard, I compose the riff, I do the bass, and I do the drums, and then I present it to a better drummer than me, better bass player than me, and say, if you can do this but better, do it your way. And so it's been like this also for this album, where I've moved place. I don't have the same musicians as before. So MikhMakh, the only original member of MikhMakh was me, which doesn't hurt the songs, since I've always been the one composing everything. But I just did the same thing. I composed the songs. I showed to Yogev Gabai, who recorded the drums on the album. I showed him the songs and said, this is the vibe. And he did, he over accomplished. Like, he made the songs way, way better. And then, obviously, mixing and mastering, I'm not doing it myself. But yeah, long answer to your question. I really would like a band dynamic on stage. That's what I'm striving for.
But do you really record the drums when you make a demo for the drummer? Do you program them? Do you really record them?
Both. It may sound overkill, but I have a small MIDI keyboard, and I know that there's people who are super good at programming just with the mouse and everything. But I just record the drums, but playing them on a keyboard. So that's my approach, and I feel it's more musical. I got that from Ia, because I've always been bad with the mouse, but I felt that's how you're supposed to do it. And then he said, but I do it like this. I play it on a keyboard. And of course, I don't play the whole drums at once. I do kick and snare, and then the overhead. So I do I do kick and snare, and then the heads. And then if I want to modify something, then I go more in depth, basically.
And for everybody who doesn't know whom you mean, Ia obviously is Matthias Ia Ekland, the fantastic guitar player and guitar god from Sweden.
Absolutely,
teacher
and a
whatnot.
friend. I mean, it's surreal. If I may tell the little anecdote, we met in Paris in 2018. It was very romantic. But basically, I was going to see his masterclass at the music school where I studied. I had already finished, but I begged for them to allow me to come and see Ia. And turns out, he had done a masterclass in Paris, so he was going to Nancy. The music school I'm talking about is the Music Academy International, and in Nancy, so northeast of France. And the funny thing, I knew that I was going to see Ia, so I knew that at some point I would see him. But when I was at Gare de l'Est, I think, I just saw a comparison, and I was like, "Oh, how funny! There's a comparison." And then I just takes, I went from the case to the guy and said, "No, it's not a comparison. It's the guy." And he was super nice, and we got to chat. We knew each other because it was also the year I was supposed to go to the free guitar camp for the first time. So it's great, and he's been the nicest guy ever since.
And Free Kitchen has also been an influence for your band musically, right?
I mean, that's an understatement.
Ah.
I discovered them with Cooking with Pagans. Then I did my homework, but I discovered them with Cooking with Pagans. So it was in 2014, and I think I haven't recorded. I think I haven't recovered since, because of course they did this big music video for Freak of the Week, and for me it was exactly what I needed at the time. If you allow me the not so pretty words, I was at the time
Everything.
a quite cocky prog bastard. So I was the type of guy who says, "Yeah, I only listen to Dream Theater and classical music. The rest is like no." And so their music is so brilliantly done that it actually speaks to your inner self, that it's really boom, 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 very catchy music. And at the same, my cocky bastard self then was satisfied intellectually. It was like, this seems to be like intellectual music. I have since then become a more social guy.
Uncocked yourself.
More open, I should say. But yeah. So, and since then also, the music I write has changed. Not completely. It's always had I guess some form of me in it. But it was a big aha moment of this is what music should be.
And other than that, other than Dream Theater at the beginning when you were a cocky prog guy, and then later on when you became nice.
I had a talk with Lisa. I talk about Lisa a lot because I love her so much, and we've been together for 10 years, and I hope for 10,000 more. But she's been a very big part of me becoming a good guy. so she comes up a lot. But in a discussion with Lisa, we were thinking about what is your first memory of listening to music and saying, oh, this is my thing, I like it, this sort of thing. And for me, it was I'm Out of Love from Anastasia.
Oh yeah,
I'm out of love.
Yeah.
This one.
I had the album.
And that was. I mean, it was purely musical. I had moments where I listened to my parents' music and I felt like, this is good music, but it's their music, and I came back to it later. But like the first time I heard something in the radio where I was like, oh, this is mine. It was with that song. And I still feel like that's also a reason why I liked Free Kitchen, like why Anastasia and Free Kitchen, but both are very danceable. Like both talk to your yes. This is how I'm supposed to feel when I'm listening to music, um, and that's where I was lacking in that. Again, all the respect to Dream Theater, they're amazing and so on. But I think that's what I was lacking in that period of dark cockiness.
The
is the,
dark
is
cockiness.
the like the head took over the body, where it's supposed to be. No, it's something that you feel, and obviously put some intellect into it, because why not? But, that's.
So you didn't dance to Dream Theater's The Dance of Eternity then?
No.
I
I was just waiting for the ragtime moment of Jordan Rudess, and always
yeah.
showing to friends who hadn't listened to it, like, oh, wait for it. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was always like this, because uh, it's almost like you're showing, like, I went super deep into the music, and you see, but wait, because it's 16 minutes and 20 seconds, there's a right thing that is amazing. Not on Dance of Eternity, it's not 16 seconds, but yeah, thinking more of Octavarium and this sort of stuff. But yeah, there's this side of thing, which is great. I think it's wonderful to be super passionate about the music and be like, this is so intense. But it was also resonating with insecurity and overcompensating, and that I'm better now at that. And if I can fill in the blanks between Anastasia and Free Kitchen, obviously not going into super detail, but I started playing violin because my parents make classical instruments. They are luthiers.
Ah,
And so I was born in an atelier. I don't know how you say it in English, but like, in a workshop where they repair and make instruments. So I guess they just, I mean, I was there and I see pictures of me with violins. So I know for a fact, but I don't remember how or why I started playing the violin. I know that after 3 years of that, I switched to cello because a good friend called Kirill Fasla, I'm saying his name because he still plays the cello, but I mean, so this guy, a good friend, he switched from violin to cello. And then I felt quite insecure. I was probably 6 or 7 years old, but I was already like jealous that he had a bigger instrument than me. So after 1 year of not playing the same instrument as my friend, I switched to cello and played that for 3 years, and then basically said that to my parents that I had to stop cello because I was going to have a lot of work at school. I was probably 9 years old. So, but it was going to be like, 9 years old, so much work at school, I have to stop
busy.
cello. But the funny thing is that this guy, so Kirill Fasla, he's now a professional cellist. So he continued like crazy, and it was like very. I think that I more than the cello, that it's a great instrument. I really envied the fact that he had found his instrument, type of thing. And for me, it took a bit more time. It took discovering AC/DC and Metallica. That was like the big moment where I felt like playing Metallica on a cello was not for me. Obviously, it was meant for another Finnish band.
Mhm.
But I didn't do that. I wanted to be Lars Ulrich. So on a cello is complicated. And so I asked for drum lessons. At the time, we were living in an apartment in Madrid. So instead of, I have nice parents. So instead of telling me no, they just sent me to my uncle who plays bass and hoped for the best. And so again, at the time I was like 10 or 11. So, very influential. So I just came back from those few weeks at my uncle's place saying, no, I changed my mind. I want to play bass. So hurrah, yes, no drums. And then turns out that, since I had a history of playing an instrument and switching and whatever, it was easier for my parents to buy a guitar. And so I got a guitar, which is great because you can play Metallica on an electric guitar. So
It's true.
that's how it started. And of course, since then there was a bit of a pop punk period um, and dark age of rap music, but mostly it's been like rock and metal, discovering different bands. And right now, since Free Kitchen, the influences that you can see on MikhMakh, especially the new record, I think that you can see a bit of Cedar that I have learned to enjoy a lot. And it's a coincidence, but I am wearing a shirt of Cedar right now. And Alter Bridge. I don't know if you hear a lot of Alter Bridge, but listening to Tremonti and Alter Bridge and Miles Kennedy, his singing and everything, has really helped me develop as a singer. Not to compare myself to him whatsoever, but I think I sing better thanks to him.
And how did you hone your guitar skills? How did you approach learning guitar?
Oh, I got lessons from Miguel Rivera, who, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, because my biography is a bit strange, because I'm a French guy. I have only the French nationality, and I have an Armenian surname, but I grew up in Spain. So Miguel Rivera was a local guitar teacher in Madrid, where I grew up. And so I took lessons from him until I moved to France. And he's more of he comes from blues and slash. I mean, he likes the bluesy side of rock. So that's where I learned most. When I was getting lessons from him, but on the side I was already always composing. When I learned a few chords, A minor, G, C, and F, I composed my first song, which was basically a complaint of always being friend zoned. So I mean, I would say that I got lessons from him, and I learned about Robin Ford, and now it's so long ago that I don't remember, but it was more like learn your classics type of thing.
Mm.
And on the side, I was always composing, which now sounds a bit cocky, but it was more of a trying to always apply what I've learned to creating something. And obviously, I didn't invent A minor, C, G, and F, but finding those out, writing your first song, it was like, oh, aha moment. And I mean, I think that's mostly how I've improved in terms of guitar playing. It's
I think,
always been. Sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, but I mean, I think it's mostly the writing of music that has helped, because I've had, I would say, 3 periods always helped by teachers like Miguel Rivera, who's a great guitar player, and he had a bit of fame with percussive arrangement of Beat It that he did a few years ago. So that was cool to see. He made sure that I was interested in guitar and that I learned my classics. Then when I moved to France and started learning sound engineering, I realized it wasn't for me after 2 weeks, but I wanted to have the sound engineering degree for my mom. And say, look, mom, I have a degree. But after those 2 first weeks, it was more of a, okay, I want to be a professional musician. How do we do it? Okay, there's the musical academy there in Nancy. So let's find a guitar player who has been there and is in my area, and we learn together. This guy is Sofian Al-Kurdi, so French, living in Canada right now, and he helped me with technique a lot. And he introduced me to Freak Kitchen. He introduced me to a lot of great bands that I listen to now. And it was way more technically focused. We're like, oh, I want to learn alternate picking. We're very general, but everything was like, yeah, you should do this. And that helped a lot. Then obviously going to the Music Academy International was very intense and very demanding mentally. But I think that's when I became comfortable with the guitar, because you play it all the time. And in moments where you're not comfortable, where it's like you have however many lessons in the day and you are on stage, so you have to perform anyway. So you learn to thrive in the survival mode, and that helped the playing quite a lot. And since then, I took, like, during the pandemic, I took lessons from John Bjork to improve more my technique. And I mean, I'm saying this to give credit with where credit is due, but I'm probably also a bad student, and now I have done my own mix of everything. And like, the big change right now has been that I want the music to tell me something. I want to believe in what I'm playing, basically. So maybe I don't play as clean as I did 3 years ago. Maybe I don't show off as much as I did 3 years ago, but I believe way more in what I'm saying with the
But
instrument.
I think what you just mentioned is a very good point, because you said you learn something and you try to compose something with it. And I think that's quite cool when you do that, because then what you've learned really gets into your flesh and blood when you learn a new whatever scale and you just use it. Because sometimes when you just learn and learn and learn stuff by heart and learn another thing and never apply it, I think it goes a bit, it goes into the cupboard of your brain, you know. And yeah, we learned it,
Mm.
but when you compose something with it from the beginning, I think that's always awesome.
And I did that recently with Magnus Olsson, who's a Swedish guitar player. He has a tapping series that he released on the Ibanez channel. And I was, first I started like how do you say, not really believing in it, like thinking, what else is there to learn with tapping besides? So I just started like, okay, let's see where the series of videos goes. And turns out, he's dug into the tapping technique quite a lot, and so it's more like, it shows the way to many things that you can do with tapping and that I didn't think of. And when I was working on that, I felt the need to do something with it. So I composed a song called Tap Water, just because I always ask for tap water when I'm at restaurants. I'm the boring guy. And it was obviously an excuse to materialize this pun that I found funny enough that you have to compose music to it. But it was also a way to, okay, you've learned all these licks, let's see what you can do. And obviously it's exercise music. So I released it on YouTube, but more like, as an excuse to give credit to Magnus for his great teaching series, and to give also credit to Lisa, who had painted one of my guitars. So and at the same time I was applying what I learned. So it was a win-win-win type of situation.
Very cool. So how come I'm interested? How come you moved to Sweden then? You live in Göteborg now in
I live
Gothenburg.
in Göteborg. If you allow
Yeah.
me, I'm gonna drink a bit.
Yeah, sure. Me too. That's a good idea. Cheers.
Um, so after music school in Nancy, we moved to Marseille. Marseille is southeast of France, and it's the second biggest city of France. So I figured that because the plan was to move to Germany because I have family there, and Germany felt like way more rock and roll than France. Um, but we chose Marseille instead. And also because I felt like with the internet it doesn't matter. You could live in the Philippines, it doesn't make any
Where
difference.
where in Germany? Sorry to interrupt, but the question I have to say: where in Germany would you have moved then?
Saarbrücken.
Ah, yeah, it's a nice city. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have now I have family. They spread up a bit more, but I think they live in so Blieskastel.
Mhm.
But then I have family in Heidelberg, right? And probably somewhere else. I don't remember exactly. I don't follow the movies and so on. But so we moved there, especially because we felt like, okay, second biggest city, there's action to be had culturally, um, both for Lisa and for me. Lisa is a painter, so she needs to be in a place of action, and I'm a musician, so same thing. And we lived there 4 years. The thing is, during the pandemic, I mean, I have to say it started working out because in 2019 there was things happening for the band. We had released the first album, which, as I said, had many issues in the sense that very chaotic, a lot of ideas, and went all over the place. But it was done honestly. It wasn't a lot, but it was honest work. and I think live we were quite funny, like what you don't have in talent you compensate with energy type of situation. uh, so that, and obviously opening up in March 2019 we opened for Free Kitchen in Marseille, um, which helped out a lot, sort of spread the word about the band, and things started happening. We got to tour then Eastern Europe with that same album, and of course I felt the need to compose new material because it was like, we're going on tour, we can't just play this album, I need more songs. So I started composing what would be the second album to try out new songs, and they were the favorites when we played them, so that showed that it was better. um, but then pandemic happened, so when we felt like, oh, this is great, 2019 has been really cool, 2020 will be our year. I feel like many people thought that, um, but again, I'm not Nostradamus. Even Nostradamus is not Nostradamus. um, and so the thing is, obviously we know what happened during the pandemic, but after, so 2 years, it lasted around a year and a half, 2 years. What was open before didn't really reopen in terms of cultural life around where we were living, and it felt like releasing a new album in these contexts, because I had released Sunrise without shows. And I felt like, oh, but maybe full digital, let's do a live stream. We did a show in Ecuador, but it was for a big festival, but it was like pre-recorded and just played there
Hmm.
online. So I felt maybe this is the way to go. It felt weird, but maybe it was the way to go. Um, it really it didn't really work out. So I didn't feel like releasing a third album in this same context. At the same time, um, it was I mean, it was the campaign. It's going to be political, but we moved for some reason. Um, but at the same time, there was this campaign for electing a president in 2022, and the how do you say, the provisions at the beginning were putting like extreme right, because we have many choices in France of extreme right. You can pick and choose. How
Hmm.
racist are you? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, there. Um, so we had extreme right as favorites, and of course there was Macron, who's many things, but a socialist he's not. So so we didn't feel like relying so much in the cultural life, it was going somewhere great. It's like then Macron got re-elected, but we had already moved. So it was like, okay, we feel like this is not going anywhere, and the whole country seems to be wanting to go somewhere that we don't want to go. And at the same time, I've been a free guitar camper for 6 or 7 years. I mean, back then it was 5. And what I felt, I mean, it was more of a hinge than anything else. It felt more open to possibilities, basically, Sweden. So in June 2022, we came here 2 weeks to Gothenburg to find an apartment. I contacted all my friends. We found an apartment, which is a miracle, and we value it because the apartment situation in Sweden is a mess. Um, and then I moved first in mid of July 2022, and then Lisa came in September. And since then, it's been just a whole journey of trying to rebuild and getting getting more and more comfortable, learning the language and everything. And it has been great already, in the sense that I've been more busy in a year and 3/4 of Sweden than 4 years of France and 18 years of of Spain, to say the least. Um, but yeah, so the main reason was because of professional ambition and political reasons.
Hmm. And I'm interested because I'm living in Sweden part time. You're living there full time. How was it for you to switch the moving to Sweden? How did Sweden feel when you arrived here?
Well, that's the thing. It felt so great. Like even just the 2 weeks of June, it felt like breathing. I mean, I always say that no one lives here. We are living proof that at least some people live here. But when you come from Marseille, it feels like the airport is empty. You go out from the airport. There's not many people. You go
Hmm.
to the Europcar office, and there's only one lady who's very happy to welcome you and to give you a car. But then you drive to the Airbnb and you see 2 or 3 cars. You're like, what is this? And I mean, for some people, because we describe this, and we've had friends come over and so on. And so some people see this as a nightmare. It's like, nothing is happening. I need action all around. And of course, I don't live in the city. We live 20 minutes away from the city. So it's more woods than there is people. But yeah, that's something that felt right from the get go. Where it was like, yes, we are closer to nature. Yes, there's less people, so everyone is way more happy to see each other. That's wonderful. Um, and then once we had the, oh, this feels great, and the stress of finding an apartment was gone, well, then there was the stress of having the whole paperwork done to have the, you know, the personal security number that is the link to everything. Um, but like, you know, that you have that with any change in your life. There will be a stress of readjusting or whatever. But there's always been this very comforting sensation underneath, where it's like, no, but we feel like we're at the right place. And you know, the future looked quite bleak in France. I'm not saying that here is like, oh, it's all rainbows and whatever. But it opened up. Like, we're like, yes, we are doing this. Both Lisa and myself, we're dynamic people. We are proactive. We need to do stuff and feel like we are going somewhere. And it feels like this. It feels like that here. So that's been the thing. And of course, Sweden is, it's super welcoming. So when you move here, you can go to school to learn Swedish. I mean, they call it Swedish for immigrants, svenska för invandrare, and it's paid by you know, the state and so on.
Mhm.
So it's really cool. You don't uh, leave that, you know, you don't leave school being Astrid Lindgren and being like, oh yeah, I know everything there is to know about Swedish, but you you don't feel, you know, I think that's the biggest, even though there's paperwork and that's stressful, the biggest change is you don't have the language. And
Mhm.
when I lived in Spain, I had the language. When I lived in France, I had the language. When I go somewhere else and they speak English, I have the language. Even in Germany, if I have someone who doesn't speak a word of German, in Germany, I sort of get my point across in the German that I learned at school. Funny anecdote of the first show we did of the European tour we did in 2018. The first show, it was in Prague, so Czech Republic, and the owner of the venue, who was supposed to welcome us and everything, didn't speak a word of English. So we did everything in German. The show went great. So I mean, my German is very bad. His German, I don't know, but it was, you know, both our bad Germans were enough to communicate. So everything just to say that I couldn't a word of Swedish, and even though Swedes are the loveliest people, they, you know, they switch to English and everything. Life is in Swedish,
Yeah, sure.
so
Yeah.
the, there's always like a moment of I don't know, disappointment in their eyes if you are like, English please,
Yeah.
or enthusiasm, depending on the people, because some people are just super happy to speak English because it's so cool and I get to show off my English skills. But yeah, that was the biggest thing, and I would say that with SFE, you get past that isolation thing.
Yeah.
And again, we moved together with Lisa. So
Mm.
when you feel isolated but together is easier than
Yeah,
actually,
that's a
like
huge bonus.
the 2 first months where I was alone
Yeah.
felt quite weird. Where it's like, and I didn't have my stuff, so it was complicated to be actually proactive. I had my 8 string and a laptop. I was like, okay, so I'm doing my scales, just all the whole day when I'm not doing paperwork. Did I really move here to just work on my scales? But then, you know, everything just starts falling into place and so on. But yeah, I'd say the language was the biggest barrier, but SFE is great.
I mean, what I noticed, because we're living also in the woods here in Sweden, and there's a lot of older people here, and older
Uh,
people don't speak English all the time, or don't. And of course, I'm going to try and speak it. I'm also learning, but it seems like younger people intentionally, younger people just
mm.
shoot ahead in English with you. But with some older people, we've got, I think, two neighbors who can't speak English at all. So,
Uh,
so it's,
I mean, we go to what they call Sprok Cafe, so
mm,
talking coffee, um, to actually go to, at least once a week. We get in a safe environment to keep improving Swedish, and of course, I mean, now we are sort of comfortable. I still destroy the beautiful language, which is Swedish. I speak in a weird accent that is not quite French, it's not quite Spanish, it's Spanish. Um, but I mean, it's getting better, and I really see what you say, because I've spoken Swedish many times in front of Ule, the drummer I talked about, and there's been occasions where I spoke in Swedish when we filmed the music videos. It was sort of half half or whatever, but spontaneously he will talk to me in English. I understand it because I mean we're bandmates, and it's good that communication flows as good as possible, and uh, and sometimes it's just easier in English. But with some Swedes, I managed to do the switch to Swedish, and I'm very happy. When I speak to the guys from Freak Kitchen, um, it's all in Swedish, and I'm super
yeah.
happy because that was the one challenge when I moved here. There was one episode of a podcast with Ia. I don't remember the name of the podcast, but it was with an interviewer with quite classy looking guy. I mean, just from the the picture that shows next to the podcast, quite classy looking guy, half long blonde hair, and he speaks in a very very crooner voice. And so I could understand him a bit, but I didn't understand anything Ia said. So when I was studying at SFE, I felt like, okay, if I manage to understand Ia at some point, I will be happy. But now there's not a problem at all. We speak and it's all good, and I understand everything he says. I'm still not satisfied. It has to be better. But that was like the one highlight when I felt like, oh, Ia doesn't speak that weird anymore.
Yeah, it's good. And how did you experience the music scene where you are now? Is there like a scene of musicians,
Yes.
infrastructure?
Um, well, there was also one barrier because we were studying SFE, and everything was falling into place when it comes to the normal life. But besides one band I was in because of a contact uh, of a friend I had already. So he had the band and he was looking for a bass player. I said, well, I am coming. My bass is coming also in a few months. And so it was already like sort of in the works. Besides that, I didn't have any other gigs. So so then some friends suggested a few Facebook groups, and so I've done many short videos for the different social media platforms. So I just did the best of me playing guitar and singing and this sort of stuff, and did a big hello, I'm looking for work type of ad in those Facebook groups, and got overloaded with answers, which has never happened. Um, Again, it feels like no one lives here, but everyone who lives here is a musician. so, so it went to the point where I'm like, okay, I cannot do everything, so I'm gonna meet a few people and see how it goes. And I mean, um, there was two consequences of this. I mean, I'm saying an ad, but I just published something, and it was an ad for myself, but I didn't pay anything. The first consequence was like, showing that there's many people that look at each other looking for musicians and so on. And so I got busy right away with two projects on top of the third, the band I was on bass. And that kept me busy for a while, but at the same time, the guitar player and lead singer of Osukaru, Frederick Werner, Frederick, very very nice guy. He saw the ad. He wasn't look. They weren't looking for anybody, but he saw the ad, and that has some importance because 5 months or 4 months after that, Osukaru, so band playing melodic rock, which is very popular in Sweden. Many bands like Nestor, Night Flight Orchestra, and so Osukaru is in that vein. Well, the band leader Oz, he contacted me, saying that they were looking for a lead guitar player, and explained. So Osukaru was a 4-piece band where the singer was also the lead guitar player, and Frederick decided to focus on vocals, so they needed someone, and they needed someone quite fast. So I auditioned, and 2 weeks after, we were in Hamburg in a festival in front of however many hundreds of people. so I mean, I feel like that's also, I mean, there's a scene, there's a lot of musicians, and there's also this thing where everyone knows each other, and you sometimes get a call and it's quite fast, where it's like, I've helped out other bands in the same genre, like a band from Stockholm called Captain Beard. They needed a lead guitar player for a show. They knew Osukaru. They recommended me. So it's all, like, I'm not going to say one big family, but everyone knows each other. And there's, from what I've seen so far, everyone is willing to help each other out, which was not the case in France. In France, at least in Marseille, there was way more this, the scene is not really big, so everything is seen as a threat. Like, if they get the gig, maybe we don't get it. So there was way less communication, was way less collaboration, and even when there was collaboration for a festival, everyone was like, I don't know, you could feel the competition, which can be healthy. Where it's like, oh, of course you want to be the band that kicks everyone's ass, and super energy, like, oh, when they came on stage it was something else type of thing. But I think it was something else. Where here, I don't know if it's the Swedish way or whatever, but every time I've been in festivals, there's way more just simple talk and no tension, and probably the fact that I speak Swedish is sort of a welcome thing, because I mean, of course, everyone's experience will be different, but from my end, since I've always done I want to be part of this, I want to learn Swedish, I want to be a proactive guy, it's always been very welcome in front. I think they've welcomed the fact that I am doing the job, and so there's a scene, and it's very dynamic, and I'm happy to be in it.
It's fantastic. And the record has been out for, I think, a week or something, right?
So the first music video was released June 7th.
Mm-hmm.
That was for Intellectual Doom. The second music video was out June 14th for Never Too Far Away. And the record will be released on June 21st. But you got
Sorry.
the record
wrong.
prior because you're a nice guy.
June
and I like it.
21st.
Yes, June
Thank you very
21st. So
much.
it's I mean, as of today is like next Friday.
Ah, okay, cool. So 1 week to go. What's planned then when the record is out?
Well, right now I'm mailing like crazy. I spend my days sending emails um, to actually well do more interviews and get the word out because I mean for lack of a better word I feel like it's a great album of an unknown band so far. So I feel like the more people get to hear it, like so far we haven't been very good at promoting ourselves, um, and maybe it's good because there needed to be some evolution. Um, but with this album, I feel like the composition was great, but what Yogev did arranging is top notch, and then Jonathan Kosov mixed it, and Tony Lindgren did the mastering. I feel like it sounds so great. I mean, I'm happy with the songs I've composed, but like the whole thing around works. So I'm just working on like the music is okay. Like the music side, I have my team and everything. I'm just trying to build a team to show people. So that's the plan. We have one gig the 6th of July in a bikers club in Gothenburg. We will probably have another gig the week after in a small scene we have right where I live, where we recorded the music video that will release on the 21st. So there will be a music video at the same time as the release of the album. Yeah, basically the plan is to do all the gigs locally that we can, that I already have access to because of contacts and the experience with previous bands. And I'm trying to find partners for promotion to be able to spread the word, spread the album, and hopefully get to, you know, tour Europe, not the eastern side this time, but like Scandinavia, Central Europe, and Southern Europe. I'm saying this because from living in Spain mostly, I have contacts there, so
Mhm.
I can play in Madrid, but it's like playing Gothenburg and Madrid. Is, it's quite a complicated tour. I mean, quite a confusing tour. So, yeah, the plan is to hopefully spread the word enough so that we can join the two cities, where I grew up and where my heart belongs. and yeah, so that's the plan. Hopefully to be busy, but you can believe that I'm gonna do everything that I can. Um, as a consequence, I have a severe lack of sleep, and hopefully I make sense when I speak. but
Yeah, very
it's
much
been
so.
it's been a lot of mailing like crazy and trying to find contacts, because that's one thing the music industry is not known for. It's transparency. So
That's
it's
true,
always
yeah.
hard to find the right people.
But it's a fantastic record. It's really great songs, great sounding, also great, very meaty guitars, if you can say muscular, like really
Yeah, thank you.
fat riffs and good songs and great vocals and everything. So, I mean, best of luck with it.
Thank you. If I
It's
may be
really good.
geeky, because sometimes the internet likes to be geeky, and
Sure.
myself also, I get frustrated when I'm looking for the rig when recording, and I don't find it. Um, I looked, I looked at what I used. So for anyone who likes the guitar sound on the album, I have no affiliation whatsoever with the brands I'm gonna say, but they are welcome to contact me if they want. But but
Oh
so
yeah,
so far,
I'm not finished. I'm not finished with Guitar
Oh,
Geek talk. Don't worry. I was just,
okay, okay, okay. No,
yeah, no. But that's a very very good point that you're making. Please let's talk about gear because
yeah, no.
that
I mean,
it's very crucial.
I mean, the first guy is Jonathan Kosov. So having a right mixing guy, because of course, we did some tweaks to the first mix that he did because of the guitar. I wanted the guitars a bit, and it wasn't very fair on my end because I said, oh, I would like them a bit more Tremonti-ish. I mean, I explained what I meant by that, and it's not fair on my behalf because he's working with Antoine Mikhtarian, not with Mark Tremonti. Without comparing, we are just not the same. But so that's like having a mixing guy who knows what he's doing
Yeah.
is great because then like he knows how the music is supposed to sound, and he enhanced it like crazy. And but then and then I have to say a word about collaborating with Yogev Gabay and Jonathan Kosov because they're the best. But so about the gear, I there's been many versions of this album, but the one you hear is I recorded everything with an Ibanez headless Q7.
Oh yeah.
One of the it's quite new, and it sounds really clear. It was really cool. I felt like especially with 7 strings, it's hard to find the right how do you say. I feel like it's way easier to find a 6 string that sounds great, like tight on the low end but not super piercing in the high end, and it's not that easy to find on the 7 string. So I don't know if it's because there's less offer, or if it's because like the lower you go, if it's tight for the 7 string, then you're getting to the piercing highs. I don't know exactly the technicalities, but the first thing that struck me with that guitar is that it sounds super clear. And I would much rather have a guitar that it's a bit too bright than have it a bit too dark. That's because I feel it's way more percussive. Not to go into the genty stuff, because I'm a rock guy. I mean, a metal guy that likes riffing and so on. But so that was the guitar, Ibanez Q7 headless, and I went into a DI box first, but then from the DI box into an XFX3 that has been my recording partner since Sunrise. And so basically the sound of those guitars is the 5153, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the 5150 models. And I think, because I've always gravitated towards the 5153 blue 50 watt model, but that it's, again, they all sound great. And I don't know if it sounds exactly like the 5153 blue channel, but I mean, when you scroll through the things on the XFX, that was the one that I liked. And especially because I think, that makes a lot of difference. I used the IRs from Bogren Digital.
Yeah.
I think it was the Drop Tune pack. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the number 16 IR of the Drop Tune pack, and it's called Dream Big. I know it's called Dream Big, so it's either the rhythm pack or the down tune, but I think it's the down tune for the same reason. Since it's a 7 string, I like. So that's the main sound, and then of course you use Jonathan Kosov's magic, and it makes it makes it great.
There's a very well-mannered name for a Bogren IRs, because the IRs I got always are called something like cockchoos and fat balls and whatnot.
Yeah.
They named all their like everything.
Yeah,
Like
I've spent most my time on Greasy Beard.
Okay.
but sometimes you feel like it's time for a change, and in those cases, I just record the dry amp, which sounds like shit, and use an IR loader and just scroll through the IRs at the same time as it's looping. And the good thing is you can hear it in context, because sometimes the IR that you choose playing alone just
Mm,
disappears in your mix.
mm.
So I much rather have a guitar that doesn't sound super cool on itself, but sounds super cool in the music, because I am not releasing the stems. I'm releasing like the
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, that was the thing. And just a word, because um, the collaboration with Yogev Gabay and Jonathan Kosov felt like, I had composed. It took ages to go to get through the phases with this album. It's also the reason why it's called Flash Sale, but I will get back on that in a minute. But it with these two guys, it feels like I gave them like a little pep talk, where like I don't know. Imagine you have an army of two people, and you're like, okay, we're not gonna take down a castle. We are only two. So you tell them, this is the plan. Do your best. And then not only they take down the castle, but they just continue and they invade the whole territory. So it felt like this. It was like, oh, I've composed these songs. I think they're great. Then Yogev comes in. He's like, fuck. I didn't know my songs could sound like this. Do you know a mixing guy? Yeah, sure, Jonathan. Okay, well, this is what we've done with Yogev. And then first mix, he usually doesn't do revision, like test mix. But since he was super nice and I came from a friend, he said, okay, I will do something quickly for you. And I mean, the something quickly for you was just out of this world. We were just floored by it, and I felt like I had created a monster. Where it's like, but like you have a picture of what you compose and record. It's a super detailed picture, so detailed that it's full of noise, like full of information that just clutters the image, and full of the doubts, full of the alternate versions who could have been but are not. And then you give that to someone who only has what you've done, so no cluttering, and just enhances that. And you give that to someone who just enhances that. Of course, that's the best case scenario when you find the right people. And being in this situation is just amazing. Like getting a mix, and you're like, I never imagined this could sound so kick-ass. It's just so great. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm tooting my own horn, because it's not. I'm just, showing that, having the right people doing the right job is just amazing. So yeah, they are. Of course, I composed the thing, but they are also very responsible for the music.
A great drummer, Yogev Gabay. I mean, I know him from the Free Guitar Camp where he does the whole
Oh, yeah,
explaining of the Konako thing, which was also completely insane, completely mind blowing what he could
yeah, and
show
I mean,
us.
I did, because when it came time to, okay, let's find the drummer and so on. Of course, I knew Yogev. He plays super complicated stuff, so I felt like, oh, but maybe, maybe my music is going to feel so dumb for him. But it turns out that it's not at all. He was very happy, and he was like, "Oh yes." I think it felt like more of a fun break for him. They're like, "Oh, I don't have to bleed my brains out to understand this one." So yeah. And of course, the way I approach it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but this time it worked, is when I'm working with someone, I'm working with someone. So I've I've taken the song to where I could take it. So it's almost like from here on, that's you do with what I've done, you do whatever you feel like serves the song, and and that's why I say, you know, the importance of Yogev's arranging, because of course he only changed a few bits and pieces, but well, first and foremost, played super kick-ass. Um, but it was super cool that he was you know, like willing to give ideas and saying like, I could sense his enthusiasm, and that's for me that's way more important than having the control over every quarter note, you know.
Mm.
So to feel like, okay, no, but fuck, I have this guy who's super talented and who's having fun with my music. It can only be good, especially because I like, you could feel like, oh yeah, but what if he does something not tasteful? Yeah, but that's where you have to find the right person, because we will probably find the same thing tasteful. And you know, he jokingly sent me, there's one ballad in the album called Grain of Sand, which I really like this song. I'm very proud of it. Um, and he sent me like a demo version where he was doing blast beats and saying, "Oh, this is how I feel about the song." And so he's like, "Do, do, do, praku, 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 tuku, 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 tuku," which just felt like, okay, we have the right guy, because we have the same sense of humor, and we have the same sense of tasteful, untasteful, and yeah, that was great. And with Jonathan, it was the same thing. He did a quick test mix, and then of course we did a few versions and so on. But I was just I had no idea what to change. It sounded just great. Well, I mean, we were just talking about Grain of Sand. I mean, so 2 years ago I was 26, and I experienced for the first time in my life what an anxiety attack is, which came. I mean, of course, we were about to move, so that's anxious in itself. But it came from mostly a place of I am so happy with my life, and you know, I have the woman I love, and everything is great, and so on. And so all of a sudden there was this sense of I don't know, like falling into some form of abyss, where it's like, oh, but at some point you're going to die, and you know, and you're gonna lose everything or whatever, you know. Like I was conscious that that life wasn't eternal before, but I think the fact that I was very, very, how to say, conscious about my luck, and how how happy I was with everything, just created this. And why I'm saying this is not to overshare or whatever, is that it's inherently what inspired Grain of Sand, which again, I like. It can start a bit cheesy, but I'm okay with it, because again, I like Anastasia. I'm a cheesy guy, you know, whatever. Say whatever you want. No, you know, I can take the cheese a bit, but I like the fact that it shows the. I mean, it's sort of. I start describing the moment where I had my first anxiety attack, and then it just shows the thought process of someone who's trying to get to terms with the fact that, you know, nothing is infinite.
Mm.
So for that reason, Lisa can't listen to it. So every time we listen to the album, when I'm rehearsing for shows and so on, I I either rehearse when she's not at home, or we just skip it. I mean, it feels like a heavy song, and of that I'm very proud, because I want to achieve that, like being honest, and hopefully it resonates with someone else. And that's why I love the Foo Fighters, because I haven't talked about them, but um, like it seems like Dave Grohl has been grieving his entire life,
Mm.
and of course, very successful guy and very positive guy also. But like I've had a lot of comfort in different stages of my life listening to mainly the Foo Fighters, but as an example. And if I could provide that to someone at some point, that would be the best. And with Grain of Sand, it has had this effect. Of course, for Lisa and I, it's very personal, like because she remembers that moment where I was in bed by her side. I mean, that moment and the anxiety attacks and the process of recovering. Um, but it's basically a song of someone who's happy to be alive.
Hmm. Would you say
So
that's the most personal song on the record?
I would say so, because I know I can be. Um, that's always a balance that's hard to choose, and I think it's good that you don't choose it. What I mean is, when I'm composing or when I'm writing, I don't know what's going to come out of it. Then I have the choice to release it or not, but I don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes, I mean, most of the times when I'm composing, at the end, I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could compose a song like this. Not the same with all, because as I said, now I feel like I know what MikhMakh is a bit more about. So I've always known that I can write groovy riffs. I've always known that, okay, this out of people we can get, and that I the 7 string is my weapon of choice, and I've always found a way of getting to dance. If it's not the people, just at least myself getting into the groovy thing. That I know I have it even from the first record. And I know I can be a bit of the funny guy. Where it's like, okay, let's take a step aside and look at the scene from a funny point of view. So that has always been the case from the first album where I did a Poor Man, where it's just the typical guy who who is successful at everything but the essential thing. So great job, great whatever. But a wife he doesn't understand or whatever. I mean, it's stereotypical, but you see the thing. So um, I know I can do that. So I would tend to see it as the more stereotypical how to say persona I can do, where it's like like this and look at me, that goes well with the groovy thing, and I like it. I mean, there's songs like that. Surprise, surprise is the first song I composed for the album, and it's based on a true story. Where it's like we were having a talk. It was actually at the Freak Guitar Camp, and the camper in question is no longer welcome at the camp, so that's a good thing. But where
Ah,
you're
yeah.
like, in a conversation where you feel like, oh, we are around like-minded people, and all of a sudden, one of the three who's talking turns out to be a misogynist. Um, of course, I don't describe the real scenario or the real person in the song, but I mean, I don't know if it's cynical, but this thing where it's pseudo funny and so on. I know that I can do that, um, but but again, I try not to be stereotypical of myself, like being the YouTube version of myself, because I
Mm.
think there's nothing worse than to being. I mean, there's nothing worse. Yes, we are in a world where there's horrible people leading worlds. So there's many things worse than being a stereotypical version of yourself. But um, I always feel that it's weird being like the fool. Like, oh, look at me, I do this, and whatever exaggerated faces you would do for YouTube, and then try to take yourself seriously.
Mm.
By, I don't take myself seriously, but I think there's way more to life than just laughing. And I think you laugh better when you've been to the things that are not so funny.
Mm.
So that's why I really cherish Grain of Sand, because it shows. I mean, again, people will do whatever they want with it, and I mean, I hope it will resonate with people. That's the only thing I can do when I compose. But for me, it shows that I can also not be the woo the type of guy. When I'm playing live, I'm like that. But it's just because I am happy to be alive, and I feel like live music is a moment to celebrate being alive, and actually being alive at the same time. So when you're an unknown band and you're trying to get people's attention and everything, the easiest way to celebrate life is to actually jump on stage like you are a leprechaun. And you're like, oh, look at me, I have a green guitar and I say funny things and blah, 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 blah. But I feel this same sense of celebrating life and celebrating being alive at the same time when I see Mammoth playing Distance, for instance,
Mm.
which is a sad moment. I mean, I saw them a few days ago, so that's why it's quite fresh. I love that band. I think what Wolf is doing is impressive, in the
Mm.
sense that I've had my struggles to try and find my worth and find my path, so to speak. I feel like this guy, he's just a few years older than me. He's in his 30s, if I'm not mistaken. He's the son of one, if not the most revolutionary guitar player in rock and metal music.
Mm.
Again, depending on which side of history you are, you're more of a Jimi Hendrix guy, or a Malmsteen, or a Van Halen, or an Eric Clapton. But he's in that thing, and he's following in the footsteps, doing something completely. I mean, it's still rock music, but completely different, and very honest, and so on. So I love the music and I admire him a lot, and yeah. So I think it's that's the perfect show, is a show where you can laugh, you can cry, and you can laugh even more.
Mm.
And that's how he builds it. It's a party, then we cry, and then another celebration at the end of the world, and don't back down, and it's an explosion. You have to be there. It's just so great. So that's that's what I'm hoping to bring to people, and so that's why I cherish the sad bits of
Mm.
the album, and hoping not to sound cynical on the funny bits.
So Flash Sale by MikhMakh out next Friday, which is which date again? I'm so bad with dates. Today's
21st of June.
21st of June, and we put the links everywhere. And yeah, cool. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you so much for having me.